You have got to find out the mix of success as it looks to you, right? Maybe I don't want a lot of money myself. Maybe I want a lot of money for my employees. That could be a mix of success that sounds good to you. And you have got to figure it out exactly what that is. And once you have done that, just plan it out, just get it done.
Our featured guest today is the co-founder of groundbreaking communications startup Deno Pi. He's a machine learning engineer, a full stack developer, and engaging TEDx speaker with a great sense of humor and a strong love for fast growing startups. Anu, it's a great pleasure to have you as our featured guest today. Thank you so much for being willing to share your journey with us.
Thank you, Nancy. Very, very excited to be here. And yeah, looking forward to your questions.
If you might take us back and tell us a little bit about your experience growing up and maybe about some of the early life events or some of the people that you really feel were influential in shaping who you've become.
Okay, so this starts pretty long back, right? I believe I was 3 or 4 years old, and that was the first time I saw a computer being used in my school. That was fascinating, right? Someone by the power of a mouse or just using the keyboard, they were able to do things, make things happen on the screen, play games, see movies. And that was amazing to me. That was like as close as magic as it could get. I was thrilled. I wanted to, replicate that. I wanted to have that power for me as well. And I remember I started trying to make games at first. As ambitious as it sounds, I tried making games using Microsoft PowerPoint long back. Right, so you had these buttons on which you had hyperlinks. If you clicked them, animations happened. Started back there, and then I remember in 2012 I launched my own website, and that website was a social network which I had built from scratch by myself. Within a year, it became on like one of the top 1,000 websites in India by traffic. That social network, and again the ambitious kid, right? I wanted to take on Google and Facebook at the same time. So I also built and launched a search engine within it. And then I was not satisfied with text search. So I also built image search as well, trying to replicate Google's image search, which was still like new product back in the year 2012, right? So image search has just come to the internet, and I was trying to replicate that. By doing that project, right, I probably rewrote that entire project 3 times. In doing so, I learned and taught myself pretty much all the trending web technologies in those days. PHP was quite popular, right? When I started doing web development in those days, it was PHP 5. No one does PHP 5 today. PHP 5 applications are dead. I remember I used to write these CSS style sheets. Probably in some of my introductions somewhere, I write that I'm a pre-Bootstrap era web developer, right? So Bootstrap was still not a thing in those days. And you had to do all your styling by yourself, or else the other thing which you could rely on was jQuery UI. If you remember, there was a time when a lot of mobile-based websites had the same look as those of the apps on iPhones in 2012, right? So that was jQuery UI, right? So I remember trying to replicate the styling at a lesser cost because jQuery UI was huge, and I tried making the same at a lightweight footprint by myself. And I spent a lot of time writing CSS, JavaScript, and HTML. I remember this. I have since then, I have open sourced that project. And there is a file with like 3,000 or 4,000 lines of JavaScript written in Notepad. So no indentation, nothing, just plain code written serially one by one. It looks horrible today. If I see it now, it hurts my eyes. But then back then I wrote that 3,000 line file. Working on that project, I believe it changed a lot of things for me because I was so focused. I got that thrill of building stuff, right? The thrill of being able to impact people's lives by building software, right? I was able to create things which people were using and people were finding it valuable in their lives. That was an amazing feeling, right? Although I did shut it down sometime later because once you're handling a social media platform, there are a lot of offensive things which come onto the platform, right? People being people. I believe I was like 16 or 17 back then, not even of legal age in India to like register a company just on my name. I had to shut it down because a lot of complications. I did not want to land up in jail for promoting offensive content. That said, although I did shut that project down, I kept working. I remember this pet project of mine was trying to make a general purpose AI using PHP. No one does AI with PHP today, but there was no one to tell me in back in those days that this is not a great idea. I tried. Turns out I did reach some level of success. Right, I was able to do these basic algorithms like logistic regression. Now I know they are called logistic regression. Back then, I thought this was just a mathematical formula. I did not know that it was called logistic regression. I learned it like 4 years later. I was able to do sentiment analysis by breaking down the entire English dictionary, some 1.5 million words, breaking them down into positive and negative, and then calculating the overall score of the sentence. So that was like my introduction to NLP, machine learning, and stuff like that using PHP. Once I got introduced to these, the online blogs and tutorials told me that, hey, no one uses PHP for machine learning. Stop it right now. Yeah, I tried learning Python. So my entire journey has pretty much been, self-teaching myself technologies. And I started trying to learn Python. I remember from somewhere around 2011. But in 2016, I finally created my first Hello World program in Python. It took me like 5 years to just get from zero to Hello World. By the way, Hello World in Python is print bracket Hello World. There was no bracket in the time I did that because I was using Python 2. So it was just print space Hello World in a string, right? So it took me around 5 years to get there. But then, yes, that was a big leap because I switched to Python completely. I remember I did a lot of work around neural networks and optimization algorithms. I published a paper, in fact, of using spiking neural networks for optimization problems. And I bet I could beat the then standing benchmarks of optimization problems. That was a paper which I published with my mentor at that time. Since then, never looked back, right? I was probably the youngest data camp instructor in the world. And this was in 2018, I believe. And since then, it's been a long journey, still traveling today as well, visiting multiple cities all over India, even outside India, talking about technology, telling people about things I have built. In the process, I also built my own startup, an AI focused startup, and definitely better than building AI with PHP. I'm now doing it with Python in the manner in which people expect me to. That said, I believe we have a great product which is being used by a lot of companies. We even have onboarded, let's say, some startup accelerators, right? So not just the companies using it directly, but also through reseller platforms, making a dent out there. Because the telecom regulator of India, they sent us a raid notice very not so long ago. And that was like, how are seven folks placing 50,000 calls per day? This is not making sense. So they sent us a very long notice of raid. And we had to explain them that, hey, look, this is a new technology. Get ready for it. So yeah, from there to here.
Absolutely. I love hearing that story because you clearly are someone who you get an idea and you're so excited and so invested in producing it that you rush forward and try something. I think that's such a powerful skill and ability in an entrepreneur to not be afraid of that first contact sort of thing, like being willing to put yourself forward and really go and try something. I think that's so, so powerful. And I really, really love to hear about it. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like even from a very young age, you were quite entrepreneurially inclined. Do you think that's something that you got from family? Do you think that's something you just naturally had? Where do you think that sort of came from? And how do you think you've developed that mindset as you've got progressed in your entrepreneurial journey?
I got a lot of inspiration from back in those days, who were the tech stars, right? Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, right? So these kind of people, they were a great inspiration to me because these were people who had built businesses, out of garages, out of pretty much nowhere. And that was where even I was, right? So I always looked up to these people in the days, probably 11, 12 years back. I always thought like, I always admired how they had created software which so many people were using to make their lives easier. Yeah, I think that is what I tried to do. I remember I tried to build an operating system or maybe like an interface which runs on the web and the inspiration was definitely Windows, right? But then Windows in those days did not run on the web. I wanted to run it inside a browser. There have been multiple projects of those kinds since then. A lot of people have tried, a lot of people have succeeded and failed as well. But then it was a great inspiration in those days. Google Plus, I think it was called Google Plus. It was launched somewhere around 2011 or 2012. And even that was a great inspiration because I saw a social network being created, right, being launched, people finding errors in that particular piece of software. I was a heavy user for Google Plus, and one thing which besides the inspirations, the positive inspirations, I think one thing which also pushed me at the same time was my lack of availability of internet. The internet which I was using back in 2012, that was somewhere around 30 kbps internet, or like maybe like 20 kbps internet. What that meant was I could not see YouTube videos. YouTube videos would keep on buffering forever. I could not use Facebook as such. I used to use the HTML version of Facebook, which was back there in 2012. Even Gmail I used to use in the HTML mode, right? So I thought that, there should be a social network, there should be a search engine which people are able to use even on limited internet. And that was a huge factor for me to, try building something which was so lightweight that even on the slowest of the internet, it used to load in like 1 or 2 seconds, right? And this is something which I was able to achieve back then. That a social network in those days on 20 or 30 kbps internet loading in like 1 second. So some amazing people to follow and a very tricky problem to solve.
That's really amazing. I mean, it's so cool to me that like you saw these problems early on, like not just saw them, but kind of saw the pathway to a solution and that you were so motivated to solve them. And I loved what you articulated earlier about realizing that you could impact people's lives, positively by building software to make them easier. So, what kind of took you from, being an architect and an engineer as someone that just wanted to build all these solutions to really being a founder, someone, that wants to build a company around a solution? What was that journey like for you? Was there something like a skill set that you had to take on that you found particularly challenging, or was it, a really easy, natural step?
I think it was, although I did love building, right? Building is something which I will always choose above anything else. But then at the same time, I believe my passion for impacting people, that has been slightly more stronger. That meant that even though I was building alone, I was always motivated to, find ways to get it out to people, get people to use it and take benefit of these platforms. And, that basically meant that, when you're working alone, you have to be that one man army, right? I remember I have extensively worked on marketing techniques, digital marketing, SEO, even design to some extent, email newsletters, blogs. At the end of the day, I was doing it all. So I was already used to doing these things. When I got the opportunity to build a company around the product that I was building, I was fortunate to have people with me who were, ready to offload some of the work, some of the tougher part, like handling taxes, finances, and compliance, and all those things. I was able to focus mostly on building, and then the reach out to investors or maybe customers. That is still something which I'm doing. The same thing which I was doing earlier, right? I did not have a company back then. Everything that counts as a overhead. Having a company that is being handled by my co-founder, and I'm fortunately able to still focus on building and trying to impact more people with whatever I'm building.
That's awesome. And I definitely see where you're coming from. When you're doing everything, everything feels like it's kind of not enough. And there's not enough of you to go around to all the different areas that you need to put effort into. And when you can start to work with people and inspire each other to, new ideas and progress as a whole, I think that totally changes the system and really superpowers your ability to make something amazing. Now, can you talk a little bit about the Code Foundation and what inspired its inception, how you decided to work on it, and how you eventually decided to close it and move on?
Yeah, Code Foundation, an interesting phase of life. I was studying in a college which was pretty much unknown to the outside world, and we pretty much had no footprint in the tech world as such, right? So this was a random private engineering college in a city which used to be a prime city in India, but then is no longer a prime city. The core foundation was basically a attempt to bring together all the good minds within the college, even outside college, and get them all to work together on building something which did not exist, or something which did exist but under the clause of corporates. So we wanted to open source, multimodal search, right? So you could have audio, images, videos, besides text documents, any format of text. And we wanted to create a search engine which was able to search through all of them with the same efficiency. You could use this for your own company, your own data, without leaking any of your data to any of the corporates, right? So that was the idea behind the product that we were building with the core foundation. Besides that, there was another which is pretty much similar to what probably came across as TensorFlow Hub later on. The idea was that there will be a lot of models which can be called directly from within the code, and they can be used for inference just by pulling the library inside. And instead of downloading the entire model, downloading the entire weights, you just had to call a function, and it will do the prediction somewhere else. So that was two ideas that we were working on with the core foundation. I think we did a lot of great work. A lot of us learned a lot of things. The people who worked on the code foundation, I believe two of them went forward to become Google developer experts in machine learning later on. Although I will not claim anything as credit to just the code foundation, I'll say that it was probably a good entry point for them to start exploring or start building solutions using machine learning, which probably gave them a better insight into the world of machine learning than what students usually get at a college level, in which they are just taught about these X number of mathematical algorithms which they can use for some basic level of predictions. So I think that was a great experience of all of us working together. We had a design team, we had the marketing team, all of us working voluntarily. We tried to bring forth the idea of you know volunteers working together to build products which the community could use. And we hope that probably we have helped someone in their journey by building that and making it open source.
I appreciate that perspective that you shared at the end too, because I think you're probably right. And all of the people that you were working with, like this was a step in their journey in them, becoming who they are now and working in a whole variety of capacities. And I very much believe that. Like that is if we say, like, I kind of struggle with the whole concept of failure, but I know it's part of the process, but I think that that is the healthy way to look at it, that like you close this so you can open all these other doors. So going down the rabbit hole a little bit of those of us that have had that experience of having to shut up shop and reflect back and what went wrong, was there a time that you look back and you feel like you made a major pivot or deviated from your plan, and how did you decide that at the time? And looking back, is there anything that you would choose to change about that experience, or do you think it was as it needed to be?
I do have an interesting take on that, right? Something which I have not mostly heard from people. Maybe there are other people who share the same ideology. The idea is that in the long journey of life, there is nothing such as pivot as such, right? It's mostly just the direction you were supposed to go in, given the circumstances that you were in, and based on the best of your knowledge at that time, the decision which you made. Everything that's happening is probably just a combination of a lot of factors. As long as you're true to yourself, as long as you are making the best decision possible with all your interests and problems kept on the same balance. I would say at any point you think like I have shut this door. It's more like this was not my road. I just went the other way, which felt like a better decision. You just keep moving forward, right? You never look back. You never regret. It's always like, every day a new opportunity, right? Let's build something better today. Yeah, that is how you progress through life. Cannot be worrying about yesterday. Rather, I think there's a whole lot of possibilities in today and what might come tomorrow. You just have got to be very excited about that as a person who wants to build and just keep moving forward. I think success is subjective, right? For some people, success is a lot of money. For some people, success is a lot of time available for their family and friends. If I think about it in the way that, during that time when I worked with these people, and, later on we did shut it down. But then I really enjoyed working with them, right? It was amazing. I was working with these amazing set of people who were always so kind, so warm. And then later on, when I started another venture and I got another team together, and I love these people as well. So it's just all good people all the way. So let's just enjoy that instead of worrying about, where did we reach financially, where we did not. There's obviously goals, there's obviously dreams, but then there's nothing such as, if we don't reach there, then we have failed. No, we have progressed. We will reach somewhere for sure, but it's not necessary that we reach X point today or tomorrow. The journey is important, and whatever we learn now, whatever we experience together, that will be something which we will all carry forward in our lives.
I think that's very well said. It is something that everyone defines their own way, success, but there's definitely an aspect of the founding experience, working with a team on something that you're mutually passionate about, that, in my opinion, is hard to find elsewhere. It's such a fulfilling experience to be working with people on something that you all feel impassioned by. And so I think that's very, very well said. Thank you.
Hi there. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you mind leaving us a review, a like, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? Thanks so much. That really helps our reach. The Founders Voyage podcast is now proudly sponsored by VidOps. Kane at VidOps has been taking care of our editing since early 2024. He works efficiently, and I'm sure you'll agree that he does a great job. Thank you to VidOps for helping bring this podcast to life. If you want the same great support we're getting for your podcast, or you need help with video, photography, or animation, you can get 10% off at vidops.io using our referral code VOYAGE. That's vidops.io, referral code VOYAGE. Now back to the show.
Now, can you talk a little bit about Deno Pi, what it's doing, what you're doing through it currently, and what the history of it is?
Yeah. So Deno Pi started, I think we formed it somewhere around August 2020, probably somewhere around that, right? And initially, we just had this idea of being able to convert voice accents in real time. So that was the first idea that we started working on, researching on, in fact, because it was a very holy grail kind of problem in the world of NLP and voice tech. And we started researching on it. We came up with a small proof of concept, and we pitched to startup accelerator program called Hacker Fellowship, and we got through. Surprisingly, the only team from India, from at least like since that program has been launched till today, right? So it's been like over the last 7 or 8 batches that they have had. We are on the only team from India that we have gone to that program. Right. So we got into Hacker Fellowship. I moved to Taiwan. I stayed there for 3 months, worked on that particular product, and at the same time tried to raise funds for it. And we did fundraise. We did pre-seed of 500,000. Kept working on it for a while. We realized that this was a very research-heavy product, and for a startup which runs on lean amount of budget, right? There's only so much time and effort that you can give to a idea which will someday definitely be explosive, but currently it is just not there. We decided to shift focus. We started building another product on the side, which today is called callchimp.ai. Initially, it was called DialSense, and the previous product, the first product that we had started working on, the voice accent converter, that was called Dhwani. The meaning of the word Dhwani is actually voice in Hindi, right? So that is what we were trying to build. But then we had to keep it on the cold burner. We did a lot of research on that. That research still stays with us. We were able to achieve near real-time voice accent conversion, but then it was just not perfect enough to be used in daily lives. And that is why we decided to keep it aside for a while, focused on a product which could bring in the money. Because let's just say, if you don't have to worry about having food on your plate the next day, your brain just works a bit more free and happy, right? So we tried focusing on that. Initially, we spent a lot of time building a product which was very thorough and had a lot of things. We built a dashboard which was very sophisticated looking. You could customize anything you wanted to in that dashboard, and no one wanted to buy it. Right. So we spent like 6 months trying to sell it to people. And people were like, this is a great product. This is amazing. But I don't understand this. Eventually, out of frustration, after not being able to sell it for like 6 months, although it was supposed to be the product that sells, we decided to completely revamp the UI. At the same time, we also decided to dumb it down. We took off all the different features and options that we had in the UI, and we just kept three things: subscribers, campaigns, lists. So start placing calls. That's it. Bulk AI powered calling from that particular product. And once we dumped it down, it was so simple. People could just see these three buttons which they had to work with. And I remember I was still working on the UI. We were just like 7 days in the redesign, and it was hardly anywhere. And people started buying it. It started selling like hot pancakes. And people were like, I understand this. This is simple. Sell it to me. I want to use it. Right. And we had to work so fast on that, revamping the UI while keeping it simple and while adding all the features. And that was amazing, right? Because we were selling beyond what we had at that point. There was this point where I told you, the raid notices and all came in from the telecom regulator authority in India that, how are you guys placing so many calls in a single day with like 7 people in your office? It just does not add up, right? Because in India, the licenses which are given for bulk calling are given to call centers with physical employees. And, for placing 50,000 calls, you expect to have at least 150, 200 employees. Yeah, that got us into the limelight a lot. At the same time, our customers enjoyed it because they were able to place insane amount of calls every day, something that would take them like a week to do with a traditional call center. They were doing in like few hours with our product. When you have a product that works so well for one customer, he wants to brag about it to the other customer as well. So we got word of mouth publicity there. We had to now choose who we were going to onboard as customers. At this point, we have like an influx of customers ready to place probably around 5x the amount of calls we are able to handle in a day. And I believe that's a good problem to have. We are trying to solve it every day. Yeah, I think we got back on a good track. So from trying to do voice accent conversion to placing AI calls in bulk every day, I think we have traveled quite a bit, but the journey looks exciting ahead.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. I agree with you that having too much business and trying to figure out how to navigate it is, a good problem to have. And I know, when we ask these sorts of questions, it always seems like this smooth transition. But how did you actually go from working on accent changing technology to, an AI powered cloud call center? Because I can see how this is for a similar clientele. I can definitely see how it appeals still to these call centers. But did you actually like conduct some sort of research with them to find out what their pain points were? Or how did you decide that this was the thing to pivot to? I know you don't use the word pivot, but jump to.
So we were already working on voice technologies, right? Our team had a bunch of experts on NLP and voice tech, the audio tech, right? So this is just another way of using the same technologies, right? So for us, it wasn't much of a shift in the terms of what we were doing on the AI side, right? And to be honest, both these products share the same base level of backend, right? So they just branch out from a position. One goes in a direction in which it's just providing AI based conversion of real time audio, and the other uses the same real time audio, produces a response which comes out back as an audio. Right. So when we were at a point where we were kind of stuck with the first solution, right, the voice accent conversion, we needed to figure out something which was already leveraging what we had done. At the same time, it was also taking us in a direction which was, while remaining within our skill set, it was also marketable easily. That is how we reached this point where we say that, we are going to place bulk AI calls.
That's excellent. And I like how you made that association between what you had been working on to what you wanted to change to, as both targeting very similar clients and things like that. I think that's a very smart way to go. And it leaves you able to reuse a lot of the research that you'd already done. which is great. Ashi, who's been one of our previous speakers, she actually was the one who referred you. I was wondering if I could ask how you two became acquainted.
Yeah, I see Ashi on the call. So hi Ashi. The both of us, for the first time we interacted, it was at community retreat organized by Google. Both of us in similar programs. I manage a community. I used to manage back then community cloud focused developers, right? So developers who work with GCP. Ashi was there as a part of community of TensorFlow user group, right? So both of us were there, and I believe it was just like some random moment in which we started talking, and we realized that we share a lot of ideas, and we both of us were working on AI products, and both of us being on that side of the table where you also have to worry about the money coming in, and how you build a product, how you market it, and all those things. We just I believe we just put it off there that we are people who should remain in touch and try to learn from each other's journey.
Aw, that's so great. I'm so glad that you two did become acquainted. And I kind of feel like the networking part is kind of like the secret ingredient that keeps it going. I use the word networking kind of loosely, but that community, that support system, like you said earlier, sometimes we need people to tell us that our idea isn't so hot, even if it's that kind of person that you can take that constructive feedback from. So I was thinking when you were talking, and how you have a pretty good entrepreneurial sense. And I take it for granted a little bit that many of us in this community are alumni of one of MIT's entrepreneurial boot camps. So I'm kind of wondering, like, where did you get introduced to the concepts that helped you become a successful entrepreneur and founder, and really address the areas of knowledge that you were probably lacking starting a business?
I believe a lot of working as a founder is about how you deal with people, different kind of people, right? Your developers, your investors, people who you are selling to, even people who you are not selling to, but you want them to know about your product and go talk about your product to some other person. A lot of times, I believe this came from managing these communities. I have been managing communities for like since 2017 or 18. So it's been like 6 or 7 years now. And I have had to deal with a lot of people, and all sorts of people, right? People who were very senior to me, people who were very junior to me, had all the basic questions, and at the same time, people who were had all the huge issues on in their lives, and being in touch with all of them, trying to answer or cater to them in the way that they wanted to be catered in, right? So I believe this the art of being able to get your point through, that is like really really important, both in managing a community and managing a company, right? You got to keep your team together. You got to keep your team motivated. They should never lose faith in you. At the same time, you need to sell, right? And you need to sell in such a manner that your customers don't feel that you're going to cheat them, right? Or at any point going to ditch them. So things like these, building the trust over the years, slowly and surely getting to the core of people's heart, and explaining to them that, hey, I'm someone who will take care of whatever requirement you have. Be you a customer, be you an employee, be you an investor. You need to put your faith in me, and I'll make sure that I see you through. So it takes time, and you have got to you cannot rush around it, right? There's no way to build trust overnight, right? You have got to back yourself by things that you have done in the past, and it's not just something which you can decide to do today, that hey, from today onwards I'll be a very trustworthy person. It's not something you do in a day. So you have got to build it over several years, probably. I think I learned that from the community, and it was very easily extrapolated when I started my own company, and I just kept doing what I was doing there, and I believe we have been successful in that, because till today I am yet to see that nightmare of the email which says that I am dropping in my notice period. None of our employees has done that yet. People who we had back in 2020, they are still with us. We did have to let go of some people, but I'm yet to see that notice period email. I'm just very, very proud about that.
That's awesome. That's a great thing to be proud of for sure. I think a big part of that, as you're talking to, is setting up a good company culture and like having people who trust you and you trust them, and there's that mutual understanding. And I think that's incredible to have been able to set up. I wonder, in your eyes, how has your leadership style changed? Are there ways that you feel like you've had to be more flexible, less flexible, or anything like that? Does that make sense?
Definitely, because I used to be a one-man army, right? And when you are a one-man army, you're used to seeing things done in the way you like them, right? And I am, or at least I used to be sort of a perfectionist. I used to believe that, if there is some task which I want to be done to perfection, then I will have to do it myself. Right? So this was a natural feeling which I had as someone who had been a one-man army for a very long time. I was working on projects solo for like 7 years. Right. And when we got this company together, then I had to start delegating. When I was managing the community, we were, organizing events and stuff. I had started learning to delegate there. And when we got the company together, I learned that, there is nothing more powerful than delegating. You will probably not get that 100% perfection which you want. But then if you would have tried to do everything by yourself, you would probably have had even worse results, right? So learn to delegate and trust others. They are going to give their 100% in getting it done. It might not be your 100%, but they have definitely put in everything they have had. Learn to recognize that as well, right? And I think this is something which I've built over the years. I used to be very bad at this. Someone getting work done, which was in my eyes not perfect. I used to be very strict about that initially, but then when you work with people and you have got to delegate because you can't take up everything. Eventually, you start learning to trust that they have put all their effort, and at the same time, you have to be as a founder vigilant about whether they are putting in their 100%. But then you have also got to realize that they might not be putting their 100%, right? They might be putting 85% because they were probably just having a bad day. It's people, it's lives, right? At the end of the day, you can't just expect them to be machines. I think I've come from single person army to this place. That was a very long journey and a significant change in how I used to lead.
I really appreciate you sharing that because I think it's a hard thing for some of us to envision. How do you decide? It really is clear, as Spencer said, that you have established a good company culture, a good trusting culture, and I suspect that people feel like they can come back to you with honest feedback and that keeps things going. I mean, that kind of communication, that's really awesome. Talking about your journey and about kind of all of the things that you've tried to build and the companies that you've created, I was wondering, if you could use your talents and abilities and passion to solve a problem that you haven't had a chance to focus your energy on yet, is there one that you might want to tackle?
I think a lot of problems in this world can be solved in similar blueprint, right? In which you assemble all the pieces of information that you have available with you, and then you look at it from a neutral standpoint, and you try to design a architecture to whatever you're going to solve around it. It may or may not be in tech, but everyone's got to have a plan. And that plan it cannot be, this rigid plan which has like all the joints fitting in very tightly. It cannot be like that. Rather, it's got to be flexible. It's got to take in the margin of error that's going to come up in every step. And you have got to bring people together who, you trust that they are going to put in their best. This best might not be 100%. Their best they are going to put in to solve that problem. And a lot of times you have to realize that you are probably not the person who will solve it better than they will do it. But then you have to, uh, you know, bring them together, make them work together. That is your task. You should stick to that. You should not try to tell them how to do their job. Rather, you should focus on making sure that they are able to get the task done properly together. This is another thing which I learned from the community because I'm a person who has never worked on mobile app development, right? And I have led teams which have built mobile apps, right? So all I need to do is get the people together, get them all the information they need, give them a plan, and let them execute it. Step back and don't, try to teach them about what they need to do. They already know that. I think a lot of problems may or may not be tech can be solved with the same pattern. The idea is that, you don't have to be the person who executes everything, right? Rather, as a leader, your task is simply to create that environment in which that problem can be solved. I believe anyone who is a good leader can do that.
Well said. I think that might end up being one of the quotes we take from this show, that your job as the leader is to set up the environment where the problem can be solved. I think that's so well said. Thank you very much for that. Our last question we ask everyone, and it's very free form to take it however sort of makes the most sense to you. And it's basically, what words of wisdom or piece of advice would you want to leave us with? Whether that's something someone else has shared with you, something you've read, or something you've come up with yourself.
Yeah, I think again, picking something from things which I've already said, right? Find out your mix of what success looks like to you. Whether you are a founder or you're not a founder, does not matter. But then you have got to find out the mix of success as it looks to you, right? Maybe I don't want a lot of money myself. Maybe I want a lot of money for my employees. That could be a mix of success that sounds good to you. And you have got to figure it out exactly what that is. And once you have done that, just plan it out, just get it done. One thing which I've learned over the years is that not having someone to guide you can be dangerous, yes, but it can also be beneficial. There's no one to tell you that, hey, this cannot be done. You believe it, go ahead and do it, right? You will probably not get there 100%, you'll probably get there 80%. But then maybe that 80% is what the other person dreamt of who was relying on you, right? So just start building, start solving, find your exact goal from life, right? It may be something today, it may change tomorrow, but then always have that guiding light ahead of you that this is what I want to do, this is what I want to achieve as of today. Might change tomorrow, does not matter. But then just keep moving towards it. Do not have regrets. What's even the point? Right? Just keep moving forward.
That is a can-do attitude for sure. I really appreciate it. Well, thank you so much for taking so much time with us today. We really appreciate your thoughts and everything you've shared with us and taught us. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate the energy you bring to these discussions in this community. Spencer and I feel really fortunate to be part of this community with you and for the opportunity to bring you cooperative learning experiences like this each week. Safe flight, and thank you for joining us. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, Nancy and Spencer.
You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.